Hey, Gately Musings fans! I got quite a few responses to my Hey Introduce Yourself video, and I want to respond to some of those just for kicks. And I guess that is the point of the whole thing, isn't it? Well, maybe not the whole point. But anyway, my first email or inbox message from YouTube is from Chris with a K from England. And he has taken some college courses because his family expected it, and but never really followed through with those. Has had a number of dead-end jobs. He's 23, and he actually was watching a video about training orcas, like at SeaWorld, and got very excited and emotional about that. So really, it's quite simple. That's what you need to pursue. Life is short. You do have to follow your dreams, and that involves some risk to it. Now, when you are young, you can live pretty cheap, and you gotta think outside the box. For example, can you get a modest loan and get a trailer? Can you get a truck with a little camper on the back? Do you have 6 friends who you could rotate the camper around in their driveways? Well, and how can you get involved with animals? What I just said is like, well, okay, don't necessarily do that with your life, but that's one way to live inexpensively. And that's the advantage that youth has on its side, is that you really can live on the cheap. And it's really quite wonderful. Looking back, I realize when I was poorest, I was happiest. Or rather, when I had the most stability. How do I describe that? Money worries are no fun. So there's that. So that's my advice to you, Chris. Get online and find out what it's like. Find out well, where do they do that thing that you love? How can you get involved with that? What other kind of animals do you like? So, well, that's all I have to say about that, except whatever you do, don't let people force you to do things. There's, how do I describe this? It's, the obvious way isn't always the best way, where people say, oh, well, this is what's expected of you. Well, maybe not. It's not their life, it's your life. Okay, so that first video was for Chris with a K, in case I didn't say. The next thing I'm going to respond to is for Eric with a C. Oh, and by the way, Chris, don't just roll over and accept your fate. Whenever you're feeling like that, go watch The Matrix, which is a great movie, and you'll notice during the entire movie, the main character is presented with 2 choices. People keep saying, well, you can have this or this. And his breakthrough in his mind is, I reject both of those notions and I pick this third way. So anyway, a lot of great vibes in that movie. So Eric with a C is, I do believe, in his early 30s, has a baby daughter, lives in Southern California, has moved back in with his parents, not overly thrilled about that. And for you, I have a lot of advice. And again, my first advice is don't let other people tell you what to do. I'm only here to maybe put forth some other ideas that maybe you didn't think about. And so he's saying that his wife has severe student loan debts. So stop that immediately. You got to pick one. You have to pick one. If the baby is the thing for you, a little too late now, then someone needs to be there to raise the baby. So pick one of you, do it, or take shifts, maybe. I'm not telling you how to live your life in that respect. I'm just saying a child deserves a parent around. So there's that aspect. But what I really want to say is be careful of false choices. That I think a lot of people go to college because it's like, well, what do I do now? Well, I guess I'll go to college. It's kind of like the default trap door that everyone like falls into unless they're warned away from it. There's tons of different ways. Let me give you just an example. And I'm not saying to do this. I'm giving you an example in my life. I noticed my 7-year-old wasn't doing well in school. And he was getting suspended because he would flip his desk. He would just flip out. And so I went there, and in one day I figured out what the deal was, which is here's this brilliant child, and I'm just not going to go into detail, but he was crushed. He was crushed by the mundanity of it all. And even though he had a good teacher, the public school system is set up with 30 kids per class, and there's only so much the teacher could do. And I actually calculated he's probably getting 2 to 3 minutes of direct attention per hour. The rest of the time, he's sitting there confined in this stale classroom just looking at his teacher. And I'm thinking, okay, if there's no interaction at all, the teacher's just saying things, what's the difference between that and a screen? The answer is not much. And it's like a prison yard. You go out and all the playground equipment is like swarming with kids. There were actually lines for everything. And they get this is what they're looking forward to. They get 15 minutes to go out there, and they run them around in the 89-degree heat. And there's kids like clustered around, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like the prison yard from My Name is Earl. And I'm like, okay, we're done with this. So we immediately took our kids out of public school. And I feel bad that I just, again, even though I knew better, I just went along with what was presented to me. No, you make a third thing. So we all banded together, us and another set of parents, and we made our own school. A school where it's field trips only. And every day my kids are out having grand adventures. And actually, if you think about it, what do you use as an adult? What are the actual skills that you use, that you need? That's what we're teaching our kids. We're teaching our kids the old way, which is you carry them with you and you teach them whatever it is you need to survive in your environment. And so let me give you an example. When I was teaching in public school in California, I had to sub for a 7th grade class, and I had to teach them the quadratic equation. So I'm teaching them the quadratic equation, first, outer, inner, last. And I realized the only time I had used the quadratic equation in, 13 years since graduating high school was to teach it again to another class of kids. In other words, the public school system, because it's funded by forced taxation, perpetuates useless knowledge. Yeah, I'm ripping the public school system. It is a horrible way, and this giant monstrosity has just stifled, like a blanket of cold ash, any sort of spark of creativity. Yeah, I call the public schools sausage factories, because they grind all the kids down into one lump, and they spit them out. So they're good for being factory workers. Yep, not a fan. The only thing good about public school is it teaches you strength of character, that you endured public school. Yeah, and my 10-year-old son, was actually assaulted on the playground. And I was thinking, because it was like, well, do we teach him to defend himself? How do we handle this? And I was like, why does he have to defend himself? He's got constitutional rights not to be touched or poked or piled on. Yeah, these 2 other kids were crushing him on the ground. And I was like, what kind of parent would I be if I allowed him to go back into that environment even for one more day? Not a very good one. Oh, I'm sorry guys if this is incendiary. I'm just open the window and look at the freak. I'm just telling you how I feel about it. And I went to public school, and I loved it, and thought I was benefited from it. But guess what? Only because I went to public school in Oregon in the 80s, where I suspect at least a third of my teachers were high. So they really didn't care. They would give you a passing grade almost for nothing. Why was that good for me? Because it allowed me to explore what else I was doing. Like I was a voracious reader. I had time for that. Dungeons and Dragons. I wrote, handwritten, a stack this high through my high school years of game systems and adventures and maps. And it's all written out in nice handwriting, page after page after page after page. And then when printers come out, the old dot printers, those things, page after page, just on dot printers. And, and so kids need to explore, and there's other ways to do it. So, my friend, if teaching truly is your thing, all you got to do, guess what, is get a business license, find out the rules for private schools, start your own school. That's right. All you got to do, think about this. If you made a class of 12 kids and you got the parents to pay you $400 a month, that would be $4,800 a month. There you go. Give you a little extra for field trips and equipment and stuff like that. You could start your own thing. You just have to study. So you're with your parents. First off, you need to get away from your parents. When you're a young married couple, you need to be out. And I have articles on if you email me, I'll dig up some articles on my blog about this. I have a really good one. I think it's called The Hunter's Bow. And you might not like it. It's not modern. But it might give you some good ideas. So yeah, you take your wife, your baby, come on out to Utah. Great place to raise a family, super inexpensive to live, and you can figure out what it is you're doing. But I would advise you, see, now I'm dispensing advice, like I know something. Stay at home for maybe 2 to 4 months. Whatever's going on with the old parents, like just figure that out. But don't be around. Actually get out. Like go to the public library for 10 hours a day or somewhere like that. Or make a rotation between 4 locations downtown. And so what you do is you're going to read, you're going to go on the internet. If you have a laptop with mobile internet, that's fantastic. Get out of the house and go around. And this is your study time. This is a time for you to study up on what's going on with life. And then you can make the move. Maybe hit your parents up for some money. They might, I don't know what the situation is, but they might be glad to see you go. Don't know, but I have to tell you, if you're a young married couple, you need to get out on your own and away from all relatives. I know that sounds contrary, but you have to forge your own relationship, and it will force you to be the provider, mighty hunter. And I think there's a real power to that. So, hold on a second. Okay, the next person didn't give his name. He is hold on a second. He is married with a 5-year-old child and a career in diplomacy. And his question is, how do you balance family, career, and hobby? Okay, you just schedule those things. For me, I made career and hobby the same thing. It's all beautiful. I only have 2 worlds, and they're both beautiful, and I just shuttle back and forth and back and forth. And it's wonderful. If you don't have a commute, that's not my advice specifically to you, but generally to people, is move close to your job or get your job close to you. And think outside the box. Don't make your own situation. Like right now, I would never commute ever again. So getting rid of the commute, that's a really big secret too. By the way, it's late at night. I took a shower. I didn't really comb my hair or whatever. But guess what? This is it. I'm me. So I pretty much, I have a brother-in-law, and I was talking to him one day, and I'm like, so what do you do for fun? This is when we were really a lot younger. It's like, well, what do you do for fun? And he's like, well, I like to play basketball. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. How often do you go? It's like, I don't go at all. I'm like, seriously? You can't even go one time a week? He's like, yeah, I'm too busy with my other things. I'm like, okay, if I ever say this to you, shoot me, because you can't get to that. So you got to defend your, oddly, you have to defend your hobby first. You have to, that is sacred time, and it doesn't matter what happens. Your woman can be throwing dishes through all the windows. I'm headed off to the game store. And if you got to do an end run with the car keys, that's what you got to do. You got to maintain those hobbies and maintain them well, because then you won't be as good at the other things. And a smart woman will recognize and respect that and understand that the bear has to go back in his cave and, and sleep it off and then come out a refreshed, happy bear. So there's that. So get rid of your commute and keep your hobby time sacred. Okay, lastly, as someone, I couldn't find the message, I think his name is Mark. So hi Mark, if that's right. He asked me about what do you think about the U.S. presidential election, and a couple of people asked me about the decline of the U.S. power. So I'll talk about both of those things. U.S. presidents are propagandized into victory. The media, I know that's a general term, tells people what to think. So it's wag the dog. And I believe I have a moral obligation to do what I can to do the right thing. So if a tank is bearing down and all I have is a pea, then I have to throw the pea at the tank, so to speak. I am definitely nonviolent. I don't believe that any man has the wisdom to run another man's life, and there aren't any men who are wise enough to take the sword of justice and use it on their fellow man. Yeah, typically that's the case. So you have to be careful when you take violence into your own hands, and that's not me. I am going to live my life positively and move forward in a way that protects the interest of my family and those closest to me as best I can. So I believe in the positive. I believe in the Sermon on the Mount, the teachings of Jesus Christ regarding loving your enemies, and I believe there's a real power to that, more than you might think. But anyway, back to politics. No, it's two wings on the same bird. Right now, it's really, you're just, the basic things, the things that would really matter, are pretty much the same for both candidates. So, but I'm still going to show up and vote. I'm going to be involved in the process and try and get the United States back to the Constitution and be a voice and an agitating voice in some cases. Now, about U.S. power, isn't that interesting? Who cares if a country's powerful? I care if there's freedom. So what makes the U.S. great, or made the U.S. great, is that we do have, we can always go back instantaneously and find our way again, if only we will hearken to the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, to me, that's liberty. Liberty and justice for all is the Bill of Rights. And as a corollary, the Constitution. I know the Bill of Rights is presented as amendments to the Constitution, but really the Bill of Rights, that's what a government's for, is to preserve your rights. And so right now, so I say the answer to the question is the decline of U.S. power, irrelevant. The decline of freedom in the United States, that's everything. And that is, unfortunately, what's happening to the American people. But apparently most are too busy chanting USA or getting distracted with all the dog and pony shows set before us to actually do anything about it. But I don't think, I think Ron Paul, I want to be clear, it's not Ron Paul, it's what he has taught or retaught people in the public who bothered to actually read a book by him. And that's what people do. They go, I like Ron Paul, except for his foreign policy. Oh, what was his foreign policy? They don't know. They just heard it on Fox News or MSNBC or whatever, and they just say that. And, you know, I don't blame people, because I do that to some extent. I find someone that, you know, or not I, but because that's not true. I don't find someone I like and then just kind of go with what they say. So that wasn't accurate. I go to lots of different sources, and then I come up with my own conclusion. But that's not the majority of people in the U.S. right now. And I don't mean to excoriate my countrymen, but I think that is the sad, sorry state of affairs in the United States. Decline of freedom in the United States. But I do have hope, and I must have hope, and I must forge on. And I think it's not going away. It's the eternal struggle, tyranny against freedom, statism versus classic liberalism. So there you have it, libertarianism, as it were. So that is that is my view on that. So in general, I would say a good guiding principle in life is the obvious way is not always the best way. You have to find and forge your own way. If I could go back in time, I definitely wouldn't go to college. All the things I learned in college, I could have learned for free through books and the internet. And my college degree hasn't really done anything except to be a backdrop for taking videos of the toy soldiers that I sell, which business is my only chance of actually paying back my college degree. So to the gentleman thinking of going into public education in California, I would say flee. Flee the state as fast as humanly possible. The internet is a wonderful thing. It opens a window. It's a window to whatever you want to see in the entire world. Isn't that amazing? Any information at your fingertips. Wikipedia, I mean, to put Wikipedia in books would take rooms. It's amazing. It's really amazing what opportunities that opens up for you people that are now in your 20s and even in your 30s. What an absolutely amazing thing. I love my generation because we straddle the computer age. I did everything on paper at one point. I had a hand-cranked Xerox machine that would put out carbon copies of papers. Dungeons and Dragons with pencil and paper. Yeah, imagine that. No computers. It's really amazing. So I got to know what the difference was, and yeah, stay out of debt. That's really a big one. Student loans are the worst thing in the world. You lose your time and your money. There's very few professions. There's professions that are gilded. Well, you know, I'm on to other topics and it's really late. So thank you all for tuning in. By all means, leave a comment with further questions. Send me messages to my email, and keep them coming.